After taking the aforementioned actions, the parties will establish a mechanism to continue discussions about economic and trade relations. The tariff revisions will be imposed by May 14th. Michael, markets are taking off. Futures jumped last night just on Bessent saying that it was a positive weekend.
Yeah, look, this is extraordinarily positive. You always knew that something was going to come about and that China had to give in substantially because every dollar of trade to the United States is 5 times more impactful from China than it is to the U.S. And so we do not sell a tremendous amount of goods over there, but for them to sell into us is extraordinarily significant because you have finished manufactured high-value goods coming from China into this country, which can be, for every job created from that, could be up to 8 jobs over there. So it is substantial how much they came down with these tariffs at this point and how much they got done this weekend is a massive surprise. And from an equity market investor standpoint, if we get closes above the 200-day moving average of both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, watch out because the hedge fund community is totally and completely underinvested at the moment.
Yeah. Well, Liz, this was the deal. I'm used to buying everything on Shein and Temu and gotten great deals from Alibaba. So, you know.
Yeah, look, I think this is welcome news to just about everybody. I did not see this substantive deal coming with China this quickly, but you knew it was an inevitability. You know it's an inevitability with all these other nations, again, because of the underlying math. All these countries sell so much more into the U.S., and the dollar amounts are so much more significant to our trading partners than they are to us when we sell over there. So we are going to end up in a much better situation. It's unfortunate that we had to live through this market volatility. But look, you can't bake a cake without breaking some eggs.
All right. Well, certainly the markets are celebrating right now what they got last night and this morning. Dow up 898 points in the futures. We're just getting started this morning. That is the big word that the markets have needed clarity with all of this because, you know, from that big board that was put up in the Rose Garden with all the different countries and all the different numbers. You know,
look, I think the street's been wrong on this, like almost from the start. I think it was the largest overreaction of my entire career. I did think it would take a little bit longer to work this out. But I think the speed with which we're seeing some sort of resolution, it's not final resolution, but close to final resolution. And with so many institutional investors underinvested, I think this rally could really take off from here. What say you, Peter?
I couldn't agree more. You know, usually.
Yeah. And that is just, it's not okay. I mean, they're standing up.
This is an 80-20 issue in the U.S. with 80% of the population against it. An overwhelming majority of Democrats are against this. Yet, again, you have this 20%, the power structure of the left controlling the media. I think they're losing the battle now. But this is not right. This should not be happening. And the person who's the most affected here is that young man being told that he can be a girl and it's okay for him to compete against these other women because he feels this way or that way because he's probably got some fringe lunatic left parents. I mean, this is a tragedy all around that needs to be stopped.
Yeah, totally true.
I'd say even Gavin Newsom.
Not just that issue when it comes to the mayor of Newark, but the mayor's past ties to anti-Semite Louis Farrakhan, by the way. Just want to add that context in there, thanks to the New York Post this morning.
So Alina Habba is the U.S. attorney in New Jersey there. She needs to throw the book at this mayor, as well as the Congresswoman, LaMonica McIver. Okay, she's clearly on camera assaulting a federal agent. Okay, it is one thing to peacefully protest. She's clearly hip-checking and elbowing a federal agent on camera. There is zero ambiguity about it. You need to throw the book at these people as hard as humanly possible to deter this behavior going forward, because the Democrats will not rest, whether it's in the courts, out here in the streets, in Congress. If you deport any illegal aliens, let alone the murderers and the rapists, once we start moving down the food chain to regular people, it's going to get even worse if you don't set a precedent now. Remember, before the election, it was from Pew that 62 or 63% of all of Americans wanted every single illegal immigrant deported. Not the criminals, not the bad people, not Every single one. And I'll just remind everybody out there that it's estimated that illegals cost this country, between state and local and federal, close to $650 billion on an annual basis. In a country with a $2+ trillion annual deficit, $36 trillion in debt, okay, the highest suicide rate for working class men above and beyond the Great Depression, the top 10% controlling 90% of the spending. Okay, we do not have the resources to be the world's food basket, the world's employer. When you import cheap labor like this, you massively crush lower and middle class wages, you stifle innovation. All these arguments for keeping these people here are a fraud. If you deported every single one of these illegal aliens, or you don't count them in the Census Bureau, Republicans will pick up 25 congressional seats. And that right there is why you're seeing these protests.
Well, and this mayor also, he was on MSNBC over the weekend. He says that, all right, Mike, some Wall Street strategists are saying that market pain's not going to end after these trade deals. But back in April, right after Liberation Day, you gave this prediction about investor portfolios. Watch.
The market overreaction is unbelievable, as we've been discussing all morning. But more importantly, for investors out there saying, oh my goodness, what just happened to my portfolio? Typically in every single one of these situations outside of 2008, when you have these sorts of pullbacks, you are significantly higher. 3 months later, 6 months later, 12 months later.
So that, Mike, was April 7th. How do you feel today?
Yeah, look, I feel like I'm glad I said that. Also, this is all happening much quicker than even I thought it was. And I'm a very bullish, positive individual. And you knew that all of these trade deals were going to work out in the favor of the United States. Yes, maybe because Trump is a master tactician and he's got an unbelievable team, but mostly because of the math. Okay, our exports to all these other countries as a portion of our GDP relative to their exports into the U.S. are de minimis. Okay, all the leverage, all the cards have always been in our pocket, in our hands. And so for all these Wall Street strategists to start panicking and thinking that this is going to be terrible and this trade war is going to cause a global depression, it was always nonsense. We did not know how much damage was going to take place in the interim. And I think that is behind us, because if we get a close above the 200-day moving average for the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, we stop talking about recovering what we lost, and we start talking about how soon do we set new all-time highs.
It's interesting that you say that. And also, Ryan, you've been looking at yields. And there was an interesting piece in the Journal yesterday morning about...
The problem comes, though, they like David Hogg because he's young, not because he's smart or he's talented.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? They like AOC because she's young and she's a firebrand. Not because, everything has got to fit into a box. There's nothing authentic about it, right? These aren't people that are generally behind these issues. They're saying whatever they think people want to hear. There's no... And it's kind of, it's rare that you have a politician come across like Donald Trump who, look, say what you want, but he's not putting on an act. This is who he is, right? And so you don't have that on the left. And when you do, it's some sort of condescending, as David Hogg accurately described.
I brought up Josh Shapiro because I was told during the campaign to this, Mike Lee. I mean, look at Dow futures. We're up over 1,000 points right now. And, when you were on the show with us back on April 7th, it was the three of us and Maria was here. You had said that this was a huge market overreaction to the tariff problems and that the sell-off was unjustified.
Yeah.
Do you still believe that now?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the sell-off was unjustified, and I knew that we would cover all, if not most of the losses in a relatively short period of time. I did not think it would happen this fast. And if you look at where we are today, if we get a close above the 200-day moving averages for both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, which is where the markets are right now, we're a couple of percentage points ahead. So what's been happening over the last couple of weeks after we recovered most of this ground from the sell-off after Liberation Day is that a tariff, deals get announced in the morning, and the market slowly gives back those gains throughout the day. So if we are able to hold on these gains today and we're able to close above 57.75 on the S&P 500, we are now above the 200-day moving average. And the same with the NASDAQ. If we close with close to the strength that we have right now, look out, because hedge funds have the least amount of equity exposure, long-only exposure